Okay, you're listening to the 5-Minute Podcast Review for Monday, July 10, 2017. Introducing you to 5 podcasts in around 5 minutes, and all links are on your screen. So here we go. First podcast is The Turnaround, and the concept here is interviewers interviewed, or turning the table on well-known interviewers. The host is Jesse Thorne, and the first episode kicks off with Ira Glass as his guest, and I've just listened to the third episode where the guest was Mark Maron. I like the concept, particularly when the subjects are interviewers who I've listened to a lot, like Ira Glass or Mark Maron. It's interesting in that behind-the-scenes kind of way to hear these interviewers explain some of the tricks and techniques they use to get people talking, and also just to hear them expose a little of their own lives. The Larry King episode has just gone up, and future guests include Errol Morris, Katie Couric, and even Jerry Springer. Here's a short clip from the teaser episode that starts off with Jerry Springer.
We're sitting at dinner, and I'd say, hey, how was your day? And you'll tell me about your day, and, funny, it was a tough day at the office. A funny thing happened by the water cooler, and you tell me the story, and we'll chuckle about it. Yeah, that was weird. And then you'll say, well, Jerry, how was your day? And I'll say, well, I got this guy who married his horse. I'm always going to have the better story. And that's what makes this such a fascinating job.
The Turnaround has plenty of shop talk, but there are also some very intimate revelations. Katie, I am really glad that you, network television's Katie Couric, have a very classy way of saying brain fart. Which is brain synapse misfiring.
I just hate that F word. I really do, and I try to avoid it. Although I have to say I do use it privately, Jesse. I don't say brain synapse misfiring and when I'm among friends. Okay, that's The Turnaround, and episodes are being released twice weekly throughout the Northern Hemisphere summer, which I assume means through to the end of August. So there's definitely a trend in terms of these limited series podcasts, which I kind of like. It makes it easier for you to buy into a podcast series, to pick something different from your usual listening without feeling like you're making some kind of lifetime commitment. In fact, another example is the next podcast called The Grift. The Grift is a 10-part series and all episodes are up now. It's a series on con artists, with each of the 10 episodes focusing on a different style of con artist. For example, episode 1 focuses on one of the greatest card tricksters of all time, while episode 2 focuses on an infamous art swindler. And there are episodes on an identity fraudster, a con artist cult leader, an investment swindler, and an episode on the most common con of all, the sweetheart scammer. The Grift was created and is presented by Maria Konnikova, who authored the book The Confidence Game and has studied con artists in depth for years. And one of the underlying questions of each episode is, why do we think we'd be too smart to fall for a con, when actually that's the true art of the best con artists, conning people who think they're too smart to be conned. In fact, in a number of episodes we hear from the con artists themselves, who generally come across as more proud of their skills than ashamed, like this example.
Once I won the player over. He might as well just hand me his money. He didn't know it, but he was a piece of cake. I always wanted to know the type of people I was gambling against. The two professions that I used to really, really get excited about was, number one, car salesmen. I loved to beat them because they knew it all. They didn't know much when I got through with them. And the second ones were attorneys, lawyers. I used to like to beat lawyers.
So that's The Grift, and as I said, all 10 episodes are up now, and you can find them using the link on your screen. Third podcast this episode is Wireless Nights. This is a BBC radio program also released as a podcast, and each episode takes us on a journey into a different world after dark. And the episodes are as varied as hitching a ride with a long-distance overnight truck driver in the UK, to an episode on exploring the intriguing nightlife of Berlin after midnight. The series is hosted by Jarvis Cocker, who is a well-known UK actor and presenter, but may be best known as the frontman for the 90s band Pulp. And Jarvis has a quirky presentation style that shifts Wireless Nights from being simply a series of dry documentary pieces on lives after dark to something that's more, quirky. Take a listen to this clip, which is the intro to an episode called Night Tube, which takes us under London to spend a night in the driver's cab of a late-night tube train.
Aha, there you are. Been looking for you all over. We're on a side street in the Seven Sisters part of London. I don't know if I'm allowed to tell you exactly where, because it is kind of a top-secret location. Hello, hi there, it's Jarvis here. Could I come in, please? Quite a heavy black iron gate. This apparently is where we're going to start our adventure underneath London at night. Underneath London at night? What could that mean? A tour through the capital's sewer system? Really hope not. Or a visit to Westminster's top-secret nuclear bunker, maybe? I don't think we've got the necessary credentials for that. Welcome to Wireless Nights, where every week we delve beneath the surface of what, to the untrained eye or ear, could appear to be just one more ordinary night on planet Earth.
This is our booking on point. This is where we come at the start of our duty. Right, so I'm going to make my way down now.
We'll just follow you.
Come on, keep up. We're following Kylie. No, not that Kylie. She is our guide to the subterranean world we'll be exploring tonight. Let us ride the down escalator together. Stand on the right, please, and hold the handrail.
Through a secret black door, and now we're actually in the tube station.
The start of your journey.
Yeah, and I didn't even have to put my Oyster card in the thing. I'm not going to get done, am I?
There you go, that's the quirky but interesting Wireless Nights. Maybe something to listen to if you're lying in bed in the early hours and can't sleep. Next podcast is Mark and Sarah Talk About Songs. It's one I've just discovered and I'm liking it. Basically, as the name suggests, Mark and Sarah are the hosts. One of them picks a song each episode to talk about, and that's what they do. In the opening episode, Mark explains the only real guideline for bringing a song to the table is, will it be fun to talk about? So it's not a serious dissection of the chosen song like you might hear on All Songs Considered or Song Exploder, but it's a funny, opinionated 30 minutes or so of talk about the chosen song, usually with interesting trivia thrown in from what seems to have been a bit of quick pre-show Google research. For me, this is the kind of podcast where you scan the back episodes and pick off the songs you know, which in my case so far has included Fade Into You by Mazzy Star, Guns N' Roses' November Rain, George Michael's Freedom, and Bobby Gentry's Ode to Billy Joe. Though the first episode I picked is what I thought was one of the best known songs of all time, Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven. Because, well, everyone knows Stairway to Heaven, right? Well, apparently not. Here's the opening to the Stairway to Heaven episode of Mark and Sarah Talk About Songs.
Mark, can you tell the listeners a little bit about your experience with the original Stairway to Heaven by Led Zeppelin?
All right. Well, what I will tell you is this. I got Sarah's suggestion for this week, and I thought, oh, interesting. And then I had to acknowledge that I don't think I had ever heard the original Stairway to Heaven before. And I mean the original Led Zeppelin version. I had, of course, heard of the song because I live in the world.
I think what you said is that you must have heard it, but you were not aware of it, which that sort of qualifier made more sense to me, but it really is extremely difficult. Like, my sister-in-law has never seen the original Star Wars, like, not even part of it. That is hard to do. Like, you never even walked through a room where my brother was watching it? You've been married to him for 10 years. Nope, she has never seen it.
So I think that
is hard to do.
I am sure, yes. As someone who worked in a mall, as someone who had an uncle who was a teenager in the 70s, as someone who grew up adjacent to people who loved Lynyrd Skynyrd, I am sure that at some point in my life I heard Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven. And in fact, I remember one time I was in an art class at a Bible school, I want to say, where we had to carve little shapes into potatoes and then dip them in paint. And then we would put the little potato stamps onto paper. And then we had...
Oh, yeah, potato printing. Love it.
Exactly.
Best.
And then we had to make a name for whatever we had put on the paper, and I had done a series of stars going up in a diagonal line, and I called it Stairway to Heaven. So clearly this was when I was maybe 8 and still going to Bible school, which, if you know me, tells you something. So clearly I've been aware at least of the term, and again, I must have heard the song, but when I when I listened to the Led Zeppelin version in preparation for today, I swear to God, it was like I had never heard it before.
Unbelievable. The host of a music show doesn't know Stairway to Heaven. But to be fair, there's a bit of a story around that, and you'll have to listen to the episode to hear that story, but it still seems really extraordinary. Anyhow, if you're into music and popular culture, definitely check out Mark and Sarah Talk About Songs. And of course, the easiest way to do that is to use the link on your screen. Last podcast this episode is Stoner. So Stoner bills itself as a podcast where creative people talk about their experiences with marijuana. The conversations often start with a question, when was the first time you ever smoked weed? And go from there. Forget the image of the dazed and confused Bob Marley t-shirt wearing teenage stoner. That's not what the Stoner podcast is about. The host, Aaron Lammer, is the mid-30s founder of Longform Media, a literary website and podcast. And his guests range from Nick Denton, the founder of Gorka, and Jake Lodwick, the creator of Vimeo, through to people in the marijuana business like Emma Chasen, who is Director of Education at Pharma, a cannabis dispensary in Portland, Oregon. The Stoner podcast is a result of the increasing legalization of cannabis across the US, and I've definitely found the interviews interesting, but the podcast might be worth checking out just to bust the stereotype you might have of stoners. Well, that's it. You could say we're ending this episode of the 5-minute podcast review on a high. And just to recap, we looked at the turnaround, the Grift, Wireless Nights, Mark and Sarah Talk About Songs, and Stoner. Links for all are on your screen, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for listening.